If you were talking about Adesanya Whitaker, something there is missing. You know that too. You guys are not clamoring to see that fight at all. Why? Why? Because history says you are. History says you should be. Adesanya versus Whitaker is officially, and this is a record that is not likely to be broken anytime soon, they are officially the most attended event in MMA history. 57,000 people were there. Now, the story was a little different back then. It was the interim champion versus the undisputed champion. That never has not worked. That is just cool. I love the interim championship just for that moment. That's just cool. You've got New Zealand versus Australia. Oh, by the way, the venue was down under. Everything about this just worked, and the people came out. It was something very special, and you don't have those same special elements. However, I think that this story is better now than it was then. Rematches are always compelling, but you have to be able to, you're going to be asked, and you must have an answer to the following question: what is going to be different? Why should we believe that there was anything different? And then if you've just got a Gotti-style fight that's just knocked down, drag out, and it's awesome, and who cares? These guys are going to war. Mark Hunt, Antonio Silva. I don't really need the story. I saw that first fight. You want to give me 25 more minutes of it? I'm in, and I've heard enough. That's not the case here. That was not a competitive contest. Whitaker was not only knocked out, Whitaker was knocked out twice. I personally just can't think of a match where a guy was defeated twice within the same match. That's not to give Whitaker the hard time. As a matter of fact, that's where the story starts to get interesting. Whitaker is not the same guy. Whitaker is vastly different. If you go and watch that fight, which was a stand-up fight, I'm talking about Izzy, Whitaker Part 1. You saw a very non-competitive match where Adesanya had the upper hand any way you want to slice it. But if you go and see Whitaker versus Kelvin Gastelum, that's where you see that Whitaker has changed. Whitaker starts focusing on his wrestling. All of a sudden, Craig Jones gets inserted on a regular basis into the camp as a training partner. All of a sudden, Whitaker's Mr. Ground guy. He's Mr. Ground and Pound. One thing about Whitaker, he has a hard time getting people down every now and then. He has no problem keeping them there, and I feel as though people are missing that part of the Whitaker story. Robert Whitaker on top of you is a pain in the ass. He's as good as Tim Kennedy. He's as good as Luke Rockhold, which are two of the best top positional fighters that I've ever seen. I mean, he really is something special. The hard part, of course, is getting the guy down, but Whitaker is showing gains. I don't feel as though Adesanya knows what he's getting into. I think that Adesanya looks and goes, I know this guy. I've studied for this guy. I prepared for him. I went out and took care of business, and they're asking me to do it again. I'll do just that. It's not. This is a very different fighter now in Robert Whitaker. But unless that story gets told, you end up in a position with a fight that's 6 weeks away where all of a sudden you're scrambling to put a little bit more meat on the bone of the card, which is where Diaz and Poirier come in. Robert Whitaker could beat Israel Adesanya. He really could. Now, he's got to do it one way. He's got to get his hands on him. He's got to close the distance. He's got to get him down. But I will submit for you that if Robert Whitaker can get Adesanya down, Robert Whitaker wins that round. I don't think that Izzy's going to get back up. I respect what Whitaker can do from the top position that much, that one takedown, I believe Whitaker wins the whole round, which means, if I'm right, Whitaker is 3 takedowns away from being the champion of the world. But nowhere is that in anybody's mind, because Whitaker and company are not telling that story. There's a number of reasons. Perhaps they don't want their game plan out there. Perhaps they don't want the world to see what I saw when I watched Whitaker fight Gastelum. Perhaps they don't want everybody to know that he's not just a great stand-up fighter, talking about Whitaker now, but he's also very good at the wrestling, and he's a real freaking problem when he gets on top. Maybe they just don't want that out. Maybe they think they're giving a little bit too much away. That's okay. But like anything, there's unintended consequences. And one of the unintended consequences of Whitaker not telling the story and what is going to be different, why this is so important for him, and the changes that he made, why he added Craig Jones and company and wrestling to his game in the first place, was purely because what happens if I end up in a fisticuffs with somebody and I don't want to be there? I don't no longer have to be. It's a great part of the story. It's the entire story. Whitaker is not the same guy. But the unintended consequences, all of a sudden, you don't have the same focus. You don't have the same headlines. You don't have the pundit. You don't have the mandate of the match. You just don't have certain things, and now all of a sudden you got to insert somebody on your card. It's a very embarrassing spot. I'm not sure that either guy is embarrassed. I'm not sure that they view it the way that I just said it. I'm not sure they care if it's a full house or if absolutely nobody is there. They should care, particularly when you already have the record. If I found a partner and we have that's something you take with you for life. Not everybody gets to be champion. These guys both did. But records and being the first and 57,000 lives, it's an amazing thing. But if you can't duplicate, you see where the problem comes? Matt Hughes famously coined, you are not the champion until you defend the championship. Now, I don't want to dig into all of my disagreements with that, but he did famously coin it, and a lot of people in that has carried over into the culture of our sport. But if it's good enough for that record, it's got to be good enough for other records, right? It's either true or it's not true. So if you can sell 57,000 tickets, but you can't sell 57,000 tickets again, if you can sell out a venue, but you can't sell out a venue again, I mean, do you see? You should be competitive in this. But there's no manager anywhere that will uncover what I just said. The manager who's going to have his hand out and take a piece of the pot is going to make sure there's an initial on this page and a date down at the bottom and that it got into a fax machine or a DocuSign on time. They're not going to have any hand within the creative control. They're not even going to think about the creative control. That's for somebody else to worry about. Okay, that's fine. But you're still going to end up in this spot, and it's not a great reflection, period. Adesanya is a star, for sure. Adesanya's been a star long before he was a main eventer. Long before he was champion. He has the it factor. Whitaker can beat him. That's the truth. Whitaker is not likely to do that with his fists and his elbows and his kicks while standing on his feet. But Whitaker doesn't have to stand on his feet anymore. He did the first time they fought. He was not equipped with the skills and tools that he now has. And I keep going back to it, and it's going to be like a broken record. You're going to hear me talk about this 3 more times before these guys actually get in there and they lock that door behind them. Which is Gastelum versus Whitaker. You don't need to look any further. Whitaker took Kelvin down, which was a shock. Kelvin doesn't get taken down. Great fighters can't take Kelvin down. Kelvin has only been taken down one time, and it was by an All-American named Chris Weidman, and Weidman had a hell of a hard time doing it. Gastelum doesn't get taken down. It's just true. If Kelvin does get taken down, he gets his ass back up. He could do neither against Whitaker. So Whitaker gets a lot of credit, and it stood out for me. And the first time that Whitaker got him down, I dismissed it. I go, yeah, sure you got him down. You had the element of surprise. You've never tried to take anybody down in your career. Kelvin had no idea that you were even going to attempt it, and that's why you got him there. But then he did it 3 more times. He had a total of 4 takedowns on a guy who doesn't get taken down, and he did a good job keeping him there. That happened. Got to give Whitaker credit. But it is the most relevant piece of this story. The most relevant part, for sure, is that Whitaker is no longer only armed with the tools that he had on their first meeting. And it's not being told. I don't know how much accuracy. I'll know, but I'll need another day. To Poirier versus Nate. Poirier himself told us that he has agreed, which means there's some interest somewhere for his phone to ring in the first place. He told us that it was short notice. I'm inserting that it's on that card. I don't have evidence of that. I'm inserting, but I would bet heavy. And I'm betting heavy because the numbers that are coming in, which is just the live box office, is not where it should be when you have 2 participants that have already done the biggest single night of live gate business in history. So it's like everything. It's just a case study. Nobody's wrong here, and I'm teasing nobody. I'm just looking at it and trying to observe what's going to be different the second time. And sometimes those are for positives, but sometimes they're for negatives. In this case, you have the same 2 guys doing the same thing at the same weight class with the same stakes, which is the World Championship, and the same billing, which is the main event, but you don't have the 57,000 people wanting to come out. There is a story here, and it's a damn good one, but I can't tell it on my own. I need their help. Robert Whitaker is very different. And if Whitaker just doesn't like doing media, that's okay too. There's other pieces and parts to that team. We're seeing this right now with the heavyweights between Ciryl and Francis Ngannou, where neither one of them has done a damn thing. Francis has taken all of he's getting the one getting dirt kicked in his face for that, but Ciryl is equally as guilty, somehow just gets to come out the other side. If they did not have the mutual coach who, thank goodness, chose to come out and tell the backstory, there's nothing to see there. They do have the coach, though. It did get added, and I only submit that if Robert Whitaker just doesn't want to do that, he finds it disrespectful, he finds it rude, it's not part of his nature, no problem. Somebody else speak up. Because they have changed the training of Robert Whitaker. I do not know what a day in the life looks like, but I know how hard it is to learn wrestling. And Whitaker's learned it. And I also know how compelling and interesting it is when you have a former champion of the world who looks at himself and his own skills that got him to the highest point on the biggest mountain and says, I need more. I need to sacrifice. I need to buckle down. I need to bring in new mindsets. I need to show up earlier. I need to stay later. That's compelling. That's the good stuff. That's the stuff we want to know. That's the stuff in exchange for our time and our money. You owe it to us to tell. We want to know the story. We've seen enough punches and kicks. We want to know why this matters to you. And a lot of times, nobody speaks up because they don't have an answer. There is nothing different. Hope is my only strategy. Hope is not a strategy. That's just not the case here. There has been a fundamental change in the way Robert Whitaker is preparing. There has been a fundamental change in the way that Robert Whitaker is performing. Whitaker is not the same guy. He is 3 takedowns away from becoming the champion of the world. But he's got to come out and he's got to tell his story.